The galaxy had never seen a power like this. Deep in the core systems of the Empire, the High Council whispered of a force so unpredictable, so utterly human, that even the most seasoned commanders shivered at its thought. It wasn't an army, and it wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It was something more dangerous, something alive in its adaptability, its creativity, its relentless drive. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and the Empire, vast and untouchable for millennia, suddenly realized there were limits to even its dominion. Out on the frontier worlds, the first reports had been dismissed as anomalies. A small colony had survived an orbital bombardment with nothing more than ingenuity and courage. A freighter crew had turned the tables on pirates who had outgunned them 10-1. Each story seemed isolated, harmless even. Yet, as the incidents multiplied, whispers turned into alarm. The Galactic Empire, accustomed to unquestioned obedience, was forced to confront a terrifying truth. Humans didn't just fight, they evolved under pressure. They adapted in ways no one could predict, and they thrived where others would crumble. At the heart of the Empire, the council chambers were tense. Advisors argued over projections and simulations, their data unable to capture what was happening. "We control every sector, every fleet, every strategy," one official insisted, his voice tight with unease. "But humans, they do not play by our rules. How can a species so young, so untested, survive situations we have engineered for extinction?" The question hung in the air, heavy with dread. In that silence, every officer present knew the answer. Survival was only the beginning. Humanity had something the Empire could not understand, and that terrified them more than any rebellion, any siege, any fleet ever could. The humans themselves were unaware of the fear they inspired. On a dusty, wind-swept planet at the edge of mapped space, they prepared for challenges that would push them beyond any limits they had known. Their leaders were ordinary people who had become extraordinary through circumstance. Their soldiers were inexperienced, yet fiercely inventive, creating tactics from nothing but courage and necessity. Every small victory, every clever maneuver sent ripples across the galaxy, forcing the Empire to reconsider everything it thought it knew about power. Meanwhile, in the silent corridors of Imperial Command, a shadowy figure watched. Not with malice, but with calculation. This strategist had seen countless species rise and fall, had crushed rebellions before they began. Yet with humanity, even he felt a chill of uncertainty. There was something primal in the human spirit, something that no amount of technology, diplomacy, or intimidation could contain. If the Empire could control the stars, it could not control the hearts of these humans. And that knowledge gnawed at him relentlessly. Reports of human ingenuity had begun to spread like wildfire. Colonies that were expected to collapse instead held firm. Fleets that should have been destroyed now returned victorious. And at the center of it all were ordinary humans performing feats no one thought possible. Negotiating impossible truces, salvaging technology from wreckage, and turning the most desperate circumstances into opportunities. The Empire's vast intelligence networks struggled to catalog these events. Every report seemed to contradict the last. Every simulation failed to predict outcomes. The humans were unpredictable in the purest sense, and that unpredictability made them a threat far beyond anything the Empire had anticipated. In private chambers, high-ranking officials debated what to do. Some argued for containment, for carefully calculated strikes to keep humans in check. Others suggested observation, a deeper study of this volatile species before any action could be taken. But the truth was obvious to all, and it scared them. Humans were not just surviving, they were ascending. And the more the Empire tried to understand them, the more elusive the answers became. On the front lines, humans themselves were unaware of the storm gathering in the heart of galactic power. They had no idea their small acts of courage, their creative solutions, were shaking the foundations of an empire. Each decision they made, every risk taken, every gamble won, added fuel to the fear that ran through imperial corridors like wildfire. Yet for every victory, there was a price. Every battle left scars, every confrontation tested their limits. And still, they pressed forward, driven not by ambition, but by an unshakable will to survive and to protect each other. Back in the council halls, the Empire's leaders were beginning to whisper about the unthinkable. What if humans could claim the power that had always belonged only to them? Could a species so young, so reckless, truly possess the ingenuity and resolve to challenge millennia of dominance? The very idea seemed absurd, and yet the evidence was undeniable. Every frontier system that survived human ingenuity became a new spark, a reminder that control was no longer absolute. The tension in the galaxy reached a boiling point when scouts reported a human fleet advancing into a sector considered untouchable, one where the Empire's forces were unmatched. No one could explain how humans had arrived there, only that they had, and that they had done so against impossible odds. Alarm bells rang across Imperial Command, and for the first time in centuries, fear crept into the corridors of power. It wasn't fear of losing a battle. It was fear of what humanity might become, of a power so raw and unpredictable that no amount of strategy could contain it. The Council convened an emergency session. Every leader, every general, every strategist understood the same truth. The galaxy was changing, and humans were at the center of that change. Plans were drawn, fleets mobilized, and secret orders whispered across the void. Yet even as the Empire acted, there was no certainty, no guarantee of control. The humans were moving forward, unaware of the fear they had ignited, unaware that their next actions could redefine the balance of power. And then, as the star lines blinked with reports and commands, a single message arrived from deep space, encrypted but unmistakably human in origin. It was simple, almost casual, yet it carried with it a weight that shook the Empire to its core. The message hinted at a power, a force that the humans had discovered, something so advanced, so extraordinary that even the Empire could not hope to predict it. The High Council read it in silence, the words echoing in the chamber long after the messenger had left. The galaxy held its breath. A species considered minor, insignificant, had stepped into a power it had no right to claim, and yet it had. The Empire trembled, not at the idea of war, but at the knowledge that the rules were changing. Humans had arrived, not as pawns, not as subjects, but as something entirely new, something uncontainable. And as the Council debated their next move, one fact was unavoidable. The story of humanity's rise was just beginning, and the Empire had no idea how it would end. Far beyond the council halls, in the darkness between stars, humans prepared. They were unaware of the fear they inspired, unaware of the Empire's calculations and anxieties. What they knew was survival, adaptation, and the relentless drive to push beyond every limit. They did not yet know the scale of the storm they had unleashed, and neither did the galaxy. A single decision, one bold choice, could change everything. And as the Empire stared at the void, uncertain, anxious, and powerless in ways they had never been before, humanity's next move remained a mystery. The question hung in the air, as vast and unknowable as the stars themselves. What would humans do with a power the galaxy believed they could not belong to? The tension was unbearable. The answer was out there, somewhere between daring and recklessness, waiting to reveal itself, and the galaxy, for the first time in eons, felt the thrill of uncertainty. Humans had crossed the line. The Empire had noticed, and the universe would never be the same. If you want, I can also write the next 2,000 words of this story, keeping the suspense and human-centric HFY theme so the full first part is ready for your YouTube video script. This would pick up exactly where this intro leaves off. Do you want me to do that next? The humans had not yet realized how much attention they had drawn. Out here on the fringe, among worlds barely touched by the Empire's long arm, their days were filled with practical concerns, gathering resources, repairing damaged ships, and keeping the fragile communities alive. Yet each small victory, each clever adaptation, echoed far beyond their immediate environment. Sensors in Imperial stations had recorded every move. A freighter navigating an asteroid belt thought impossible to cross, a mining colony using raw ingenuity to fend off raiders, a settlement turning a simple environmental hazard into a defensive advantage. The humans did not seek glory, but their survival had become legend, whispered in the corridors of power and feared in strategic planning rooms across the galaxy. The Empire's intelligence networks worked tirelessly, scanning every system humans touched. Every report was analyzed, modeled, simulated, and then discarded because none of it fit the Empire's conventional understanding. Patterns were expected, predictable movements, weaknesses exposed in routine. Humans were different. They were unpredictable in ways the Empire could not calculate. They improvised. They risked everything when logic dictated caution. They fought back using nothing but creativity, instinct, and sheer determination. And yet, there was an intelligence behind it, a subtle strategic thread that hinted at more than raw survival. It suggested insight, planning, and perhaps even ambition. Far from imperial scrutiny, humans themselves began to sense that their actions were rippling outward, though they could not see the full consequences. A small council of leaders on one of the outer planets gathered around a worn table, maps spread out and lights flickering overhead. They spoke not of conquest, but of what survival truly meant in this unpredictable galaxy. The youngest among them, though lacking military experience, suggested maneuvers that seemed impossible, paths through uncharted space, alliances with unexpected colonies, ways to turn shortages into strengths. Their ideas were bold, yet they worked. Every time they acted, they were tested, and every time they discovered limits they had not known existed. The Empire, meanwhile, was restless. Commanders debated strategy in cold, sterile rooms, their voices tight with unease. Some suggested overwhelming force, fleets converging to crush these humans before they could spread further. Others cautioned restraint, arguing that the unpredictability of humans made conventional tactics dangerous. "We cannot fight them as we fight others," one general admitted quietly, almost to himself. "We do not understand them. We cannot anticipate their moves. And that terrifies me more than losing any battle." That fear threaded through every decision, every plan, every calculation the Empire made. As reports continued to arrive from the edges of mapped space, a clearer picture began to emerge. Humans were not just surviving, they were learning faster than anyone could imagine. Each engagement, each obstacle, seemed to accelerate their growth. A freighter crew that barely escaped a pirate raid would, in the next encounter, anticipate ambushes before they occurred. A colony that endured environmental collapse would innovate systems the Empire had deemed impossible. And all the while, humans did not know the Empire was watching, did not realize the galaxy itself had begun to shift beneath their feet. The humans' success was rooted not in technology or overwhelming firepower, but in their adaptability and cooperation. They relied on ingenuity, communication, and trust in ways alien to most interstellar powers. Every individual, regardless of rank or background, contributed to solutions. Their mistakes became lessons. Their failures became stepping stones. And it was this resilience, this relentless drive, that most unsettled the Empire. A species so young, so untested, refusing to be constrained by rules that had defined every other civilization, it was unprecedented. Some humans, quietly observant, noticed strange patterns in how distant fleets seemed to adjust their movements. Whispers of reconnaissance, subtle interference, and cautious observation reached the leaders. They suspected other powers were aware of them, but not the scale of the Empire's fear. "We are not alone," one of the leaders said, staring at a star map with lines of movement overlaid. "And they are not watching us like neighbors. They are watching us like we are a threat they cannot define." Others nodded, the weight of realization settling in. Humanity had drawn attention, powerful, structured attention, and attention in the wrong hands could be deadly. Deep within the Empire, the High Council struggled with a new problem: how to respond to a species they could not predict. History had taught them that knowledge was power, yet knowledge here was elusive. Every probe into human behavior revealed new variables, new anomalies, new forms of resistance. Every simulation failed. And as the Council debated, fear took hold in a way it had not in centuries. They feared not destruction, but transformation. Humanity could rise in ways they could not control, claiming a power that had long been theirs alone. Yet even in the Empire's fear, there was fascination. Scholars and strategists quietly studied humans, recording not just their failures or victories, but their motives, their resilience, their determination. They noted how humans were bound together not by commands or orders, but by shared purpose and trust. Unlike other species, whose loyalty could be bought or coerced, humans seemed motivated by something deeper, an innate drive to protect, to create, to endure. It was something the Empire could not quantify, something beyond metrics and strategy, and that unknowable element was what truly terrified them. Meanwhile, humans continued their slow march toward the unknown, unaware of the stirrings their actions had caused. On one world, a small team worked to repair a communications array, their hands steady despite fatigue and dwindling resources. A message had been intercepted from an Imperial fleet, scrambled and partially decoded, and they could sense the curiosity behind it. The humans did not know they had become the subject of attention, but they felt the urgency in the galaxy, the subtle pressure pressing at the edges of every decision. Every choice became critical, every move potentially monumental, and so the stage was set. Humans, small and untested, pressed forward with courage and ingenuity. The Empire, vast and omnipotent, recoiled in fear at the impossible potential of a species it could neither predict nor contain. The tension in the galaxy grew with each passing day, each engagement, each small victory. No one knew how the story would unfold. The humans had only just begun to reveal their capabilities, and the Empire had only just begun to feel the weight of their presence. In the shadows of distant stars, plans were being drawn, fleets repositioned, spies deployed, and simulations recalculated. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would come when human ingenuity met the full might of the Empire. And yet, for all the preparation, for all the strategy, there was one undeniable truth. Humans were unpredictable, unstoppable in ways that no one could define, and poised to challenge a power that had believed itself absolute. As night fell across the frontier planets, humans looked toward the stars with determination, unaware of the fear they had awakened. They were ready to face the unknown, ready to push boundaries, and ready to endure challenges that would break lesser species. And somewhere deep within the Empire, the question burned in every council chamber, every command deck, every officer's mind. What happens when a species that should not possess power rises anyway? The answer had yet to be written, but the first moves were already in motion. Every human act of courage, every calculated risk, and every moment of ingenuity added to a story the galaxy had never seen before. A story that promised to redefine what strength, resilience, and survival truly meant. And in the silence between stars, one unspoken truth lingered. Humanity had only just begun, and the Empire had no idea what they were capable of. The tension in the galaxy had reached a point where any spark could ignite something far greater than anyone could anticipate, and all that remained was the waiting for the next move, the next choice, the next human act that would shatter expectations and challenge the foundations of power itself. The story of humanity's rise was no longer a possibility, it was unfolding. If you want, I can now write the next 1,500 words, which would introduce the first direct confrontation between humans and the Empire, keeping the HFY suspense and building toward the climactic moments for your YouTube video story. This would continue the tension without resolving it. Do you want me to do that next? The humans had begun to notice subtle shifts in the galaxy that others might have missed. Signals that had once been routine now carried traces of caution. Fleets that normally moved predictably now hesitated at the edges of known space. On a barren mining world, the human leaders gathered around a makeshift console, their faces illuminated by flickering holograms that traced the movement of distant ships. "They're watching us," one whispered. Not with fear, but with the weight of realization. The Empire was not just aware of them, it was responding, carefully, deliberately, and with growing apprehension. Humans had survived impossible odds before, but now the stakes had changed. It wasn't just survival against environmental hazards or rival colonies. It was survival against a power that could crush entire systems with a single command. Yet even as they understood the danger, they refused to back down. Each strategy, each maneuver, was forged from necessity and ingenuity. They improvised weapons from scavenged technology, rerouted energy to shield vulnerable settlements, and used the unpredictable conditions of space itself to their advantage. Their resilience was becoming legendary, and their actions had begun to unsettle the very foundation of the Empire. Within the Empire, debates raged with increasing urgency. Advisors argued over tactics, simulations, and probabilities, but none could produce a solution that fully contained humanity. The unpredictable nature of humans rendered conventional planning ineffective. "Every scenario fails," one strategist admitted, rubbing the bridge of his nose in frustration. "They do not play by our rules. They adapt faster than our simulations can account for. And the more we push, the more they innovate." The Council, accustomed to absolute control, was forced to confront a terrifying new reality. Humans were a variable no algorithm could tame. Meanwhile, far from imperial scrutiny, humans continued their slow advance. On a rugged frontier planet, a small crew worked through the night repairing a damaged communications array, unaware of the Empire's growing unease. Every repair, every clever workaround was a testament to their ingenuity. They didn't know that each success was being watched, catalogued, and feared. They only knew that they had to keep moving, keep surviving, and keep finding ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. The tension between humans and the Empire was rising, yet neither fully understood the other. Humans acted with instinct, courage, and creativity, unaware of the ripple effects across the galaxy. The Empire, vast and omnipotent, watched in disbelief as a species it had dismissed as insignificant began to challenge centuries of assumed dominance. Every small human victory caused shockwaves through imperial command, forcing reconsideration of strategies that had seemed infallible. Humans' greatest strength lay not in technology, but in adaptability and unity. They turned failures into lessons, improvisation into strategy, and ordinary individuals into remarkable problem solvers. Each decision carried weight, each action tested limits, and each success further disrupted the Empire's assumptions. Across the galaxy, the whispers of human ingenuity grew louder, sowing fear and fascination in equal measure. On the Imperial side, the Council struggled to maintain control. Plans for overwhelming force clashed with caution, as leaders feared the unpredictable consequences of direct confrontation. Fleets were repositioned, spies deployed, and simulations run again and again, only to reveal the same unsettling truth. Humans could not be anticipated, constrained, or predicted. Their rise was a challenge not just to power, but to the very understanding of what control meant in the galaxy. Even among the humans themselves, there was an awareness of the subtle tension growing in the galaxy. Scouts returned with reports of movements and patterns that hinted at observation, at strategies being recalculated to counter them. The humans didn't yet know the scale of the Empire's fear, but they sensed it, felt it in the cautious maneuvers of distant fleets, in the subtle interference with supply lines, in the unseen pressure that seemed to follow every choice they made. Every step forward was a gamble, every action a test of ingenuity and courage. As the humans pushed farther into the unknown, the Empire's fear transformed into a peculiar obsession. Strategists studied humans not just for military significance, but to understand their motivations, their resilience, their capacity for growth. They noted how humans acted not out of orders, but from a combination of instinct, empathy, and shared purpose. It was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Loyalty and courage could not be bought or coerced. Humans acted with a sense of agency that defied imperial logic, and that unpredictability became the most dangerous weapon of all. The galaxy was on edge. On distant frontier worlds, humans prepared for challenges they could not yet fully foresee, crafting solutions from necessity and risk, unaware that their every move was being watched and measured. Within imperial command centers, fear, fascination, and confusion mingled, creating an atmosphere of anxious anticipation. The question everyone asked, yet none could answer, was simple. What would humans do next? Signals intercepted from human communications hinted at bold plans, risky maneuvers, and alliances with other colonies that had never been seen as strategic partners. Each new piece of intelligence reinforced the terrifying possibility. Humans were not merely surviving. They were learning, evolving, and rising faster than anyone could imagine. The Empire could mobilize fleets, rewrite strategies, and deploy spies, but nothing could prepare them for the ingenuity and relentless will of a species that refused to be contained. And so the galaxy waited. Humans, small and untested, moved forward with courage and determination. The Empire, vast and absolute, trembled before a force it could not comprehend. The tension between them grew, stretching across the stars, touching every system and every leader with a mix of dread and fascination. The story of humanity's rise was no longer a distant possibility. It was unfolding in real time, reshaping the galaxy with every decision, every act of courage, and every spark of ingenuity. In the void between stars, the stage was set. Humanity's next move, though uncertain even to them, would carry consequences that no one could predict. The Empire could prepare, could plan, could fear, but it could not stop the unpredictable brilliance of a species driven by survival, unity, and the unyielding desire to thrive. And somewhere, in the silence of space, the first hints of a confrontation began to stir, a test of power, wit, and will that would mark the beginning of a new chapter for the galaxy. The humans had not yet realized the magnitude of their impact. They did not yet know the Empire's fear, nor did they understand the full reach of the attention they had drawn. But every choice they made, every risk they took, was setting the stage for something far greater than any one individual or colony could foresee. And the Empire, for all its knowledge, all its fleets, and all its power, could only watch, waiting, calculating, and fearing what might come next. If you want, I can continue with the next 1,000 words, which will introduce the first direct encounter between humans and the Empire, heightening suspense and escalating the stakes, while keeping the HFY theme strong and human-centric. This will build directly toward the climax without resolving the tension yet. Do you want me to do that next? The tension in the galaxy had reached a fever pitch. Human colonies on the outer rim reported movements of Imperial fleets that had never ventured so close, their massive warships casting shadows across stars that had once felt safe. Every signal, every subtle shift in patrol routes, carried the unmistakable weight of scrutiny. Humans had survived countless threats, but now the challenge was different. The enemy was no longer distant raiders or environmental hazards. It was the full might of an empire, observing, calculating, and preparing to respond with the force that had kept countless civilizations under its control for centuries. On a rugged, wind-swept planet, a group of humans huddled over a star map, tracing the movement of enemy ships with a mix of awe and apprehension. They had faced impossible odds before, but this felt different. The Empire's forces were not acting out of immediate aggression. They were planning, waiting, studying. The humans sensed the magnitude of what was coming, though they could not predict the full scope. Every decision now carried weight, far beyond survival. Each choice could tip the balance, and the pressure hung in the air like the gravity of a collapsing star. Messages intercepted from Imperial communications painted a picture of fear and uncertainty, a rare glimpse into the mind of a power that had never known doubt. Council chambers echoed with arguments, simulations, and frantic debates, each advisor struggling to make sense of the humans' unpredictable tactics. "They adapt faster than we can anticipate," one officer admitted, voice tight with tension. "They do not follow our patterns. They learn, improvise, and survive when logic says they should fall. We cannot control them." Another added quietly, "It is not just a battle we are facing. It is the emergence of something new, something we cannot define or contain." The fear was palpable, a quiet tremor running through the Empire's foundations. The humans themselves moved forward without hesitation, guided by instinct, courage, and a growing sense of purpose. On a desolate frontier world, engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships, improvising solutions from scraps and salvaged technology. Every problem was an opportunity, every obstacle a chance to innovate. They didn't know the Empire was watching so closely, analyzing every move, cataloging every tactic, and recalculating the risks of engagement. And yet, despite the looming threat, they pressed on, their determination a silent challenge to the galaxy itself. For the Empire, every report of human success deepened unease. Colonies that had been predicted to collapse had instead fortified themselves with ingenuity. Freighters that should have been destroyed had returned victorious, their crews capable of anticipating ambushes and turning disadvantages into advantages. The humans were learning faster than any Imperial projection, growing stronger under pressure rather than breaking. And every small act of resilience, every clever maneuver, reminded the Empire that this was not a conventional enemy. They were facing a species that thrived on unpredictability. In a remote command station, Imperial officers reviewed the latest intelligence, a map showing human fleets moving through sectors previously thought secure. The humans were daring, unafraid to venture into areas considered untouchable. "They are not just surviving," a commander muttered, almost to himself. "They are evolving. Every time we think we understand them, they change. They adapt in ways we cannot predict." The observation caused a ripple of unease among the staff. What had begun as curiosity had grown into apprehension, and now into fear. The Empire realized it faced not just rebellion, but a transformation in the balance of power. Humans on the frontier were unaware of the Empire's growing concern, but they felt the pressure in other ways. Supply lines became harder to maintain, communications were delayed or intercepted, and reconnaissance suggested movements of unseen forces. Every action required careful calculation, every maneuver carried risk. Yet even in the face of uncertainty, humans relied on what had always given them strength: ingenuity, cooperation, and the courage to act when others would hesitate. Their unity became a force of its own, a subtle but powerful counter to the Empire's overwhelming technological advantage. As the humans prepared for a mission that would take them into uncharted territory, they discussed strategy with a seriousness that reflected the stakes. "We can't rely on what worked before," one said, scanning the star map. "Every move we make will be watched. Every success or failure will be used against us. We have to anticipate, adapt, and push beyond what we think is possible." Another nodded, adding, "We don't just fight for survival. We fight to prove that we belong out here, that we can thrive where others expect us to fail." There was no bravado in their words, only the quiet determination of those who had faced impossible odds and survived. The Empire, observing from countless light years away, began to mobilize in response. Fleets that had been scattered across the outer sectors were recalled, warships rerouted to shadow human movements, and intelligence networks doubled efforts to track every human advance. The Council debated every contingency, every risk, yet all simulations returned the same unsettling result. Humans could not be predicted. They were a variable that defied control, a force that turned obstacles into opportunities, and that unpredictability was terrifying in its purest form. In the darkness between stars, humans approached the edge of Imperial-controlled space, their fleet small but determined. They had no illusions about the danger ahead, yet they moved forward with clarity of purpose. Every decision was made with careful thought, every maneuver calculated to maximize survival and opportunity. The Empire would soon confront them, but the humans had already proven that they were capable of more than the galaxy expected. They did not yet know the scale of the challenge awaiting them, nor did they understand the full weight of Imperial attention, but they were ready to face whatever came next. Imperial commanders convened one last time before the anticipated engagement. Warships lined the charts, tactical simulations flickered across screens, and advisors debated the likely course of action. Fear, frustration, and fascination mingled in the council chambers. "They are not just outliers," one officer said. "They are rewriting what it means to survive in this galaxy. If we underestimate them now, it could cost us more than a battle. It could cost us control itself." Another added, "We must contain them. But how do you contain something that cannot be predicted?" The room fell into tense silence. The answer was unknown. Back with the humans, the fleet advanced through the dark expanse, aware only of the challenges in front of them. Every system they crossed, every planet they approached, added to the sense of anticipation. They had grown through adversity, learned from failure, and adapted to situations that would have broken others. Now, on the precipice of direct confrontation with an empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, they were about to discover how far their ingenuity, courage, and determination could take them. As the distance between the humans and the Empire's forces narrowed, the tension became almost tangible. Every signal, every detection, every movement held the potential to trigger a decisive clash. Humans prepared, not with arrogance, but with focus, relying on adaptability and cooperation. The Empire, vast and absolute, trembled before a force it could not define. And in that moment, as the first Imperial warships came into view and the edge of conflict drew near, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The next decision, the first move in what would become a confrontation remembered across the stars, was about to be made. Every choice mattered. Every action carried consequences. Humanity's ingenuity, courage, and adaptability would be tested as never before. The stage was set. The players were in position. The galaxy waited for the spark that would ignite the most dangerous, unpredictable, and remarkable encounter it had ever seen. The Empire could calculate, strategize, and deploy fleets, but it could not predict the humans' next move. Humanity, unaware of the full scope of the Empire's fear, was ready to step into a moment that could change everything. The tension was unbearable, the anticipation electrifying, and the stakes higher than ever. The confrontation was inevitable. The galaxy was on the edge of its seat, waiting for the clash that would define the fate of countless worlds, and perhaps the very understanding of what it meant to survive, thrive, and rise against impossible odds. If you want, I can now write the climactic part next, where humans face the Empire's forces directly, keeping maximum suspense, human-centric HFY focus, and leaving just enough tension for the next video segment. Do you want me to continue with that? As the human fleet approached the edge of Imperial space, the tension in the void was almost tangible. Every star seemed sharper, every shadow deeper, as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Humans scanned their surroundings carefully, anticipating obstacles, aware that the Empire had likely prepared some kind of trap. Yet even with caution, nothing could fully prepare them for what came next. Sensors picked up a signal, faint, irregular, almost imperceptible at first. It was not from the Empire's known fleet formations. It was something else, something unfamiliar. The communication came through scrambled and distorted, but the pattern was unmistakable. The humans exchanged wary glances, instinctively understanding that this was no routine encounter. The transmission contained no words, no demands, no conventional identification. Instead, it carried a rhythm, a pulse, almost like a heartbeat embedded in the frequencies, a warning, a signal, or perhaps a test. The engineers worked furiously to decode it, while the leaders tried to interpret the intent. "Whatever this is," one of them said, voice tense, "it's not human, and it's not part of the fleet we expected." Meanwhile, deep within the Empire, the High Council received reports of the anomaly. Analysts were baffled. Every known species, every previously encountered threat had predictable signals, patterns, and methods. This transmission fit none of those expectations. Panic flickered behind the composed faces of council members. A young strategist whispered almost to herself, "They've found something we didn't anticipate. Something that can't belong to humans." The statement hung in the air, echoing across the chamber. It was a chilling acknowledgement. Humanity might be moving toward a power even the Empire had not foreseen. Back on the human ships, the anomaly continued to grow in intensity. Sensors detected strange distortions in space-time around the fleet. Navigation systems fluctuated, gravity wells shifted unpredictably, and subspace communications became unreliable. Some of the older vessels began to drift slightly off course, as though unseen hands were pulling them toward an unknown point. The humans had seen strange phenomena before, natural hazards in uncharted sectors, but this felt intentional. Someone or something was testing them, manipulating the very environment in ways that defied understanding. Leaders convened in the bridge of the flagship, staring at the data streams that seemed to dance and flicker in impossible ways. "This isn't just a warning," one said. "It's a challenge. And it's telling us that whatever lies ahead is bigger than we imagined." Others nodded, their expressions grim but resolute. Humans had faced impossible odds before, had turned desperate situations into triumphs, but this was different. The anomaly suggested a power, a force, that was beyond simple ingenuity or tactics. It hinted at knowledge and capability the Empire itself might not yet control. Across the void, Imperial observers noted the same phenomenon. Strategists leaned over consoles, recalculating odds and simulations, but all models failed. Every variable that had previously defined the human's behavior now seemed irrelevant. The anomaly did not respond to conventional analysis, did not follow predictable patterns. It was as though the humans had stumbled into something the Empire had never anticipated, and that discovery was destabilizing even the most confident leaders. A commanding officer muttered, "We cannot contain this. We cannot predict it. And if humans harness it, we are done." As the fleet pushed forward, the anomaly began to manifest more tangibly. Distortions of light bent around objects, energy readings spiked without source, and strange pulses disrupted shipboard systems. Some of the younger crew members felt a deep unease, a sensation that went beyond fear, an instinct that this was not just a challenge of tactics, but a test of their very understanding of reality. The human leaders moved quickly, improvising new protocols, rerouting power, and relying on intuition and experience. Every choice was critical, every adjustment mattered, and every second felt like an eternity. Unexpectedly, the anomaly revealed its first direct effect. One of the human cruisers vanished from sensors for a brief moment, then reappeared slightly offset from its original course. No one had moved it, no thrusters had fired, yet the ship had shifted as if pulled by some invisible hand. Panic threatened to spread, but the crew acted with remarkable calm, improvising repairs, stabilizing systems, and maintaining formation. They had survived impossible odds before, but now survival required more than courage. It demanded understanding the incomprehensible. On the Empire's side, the Council began to panic. The anomaly defied their most advanced technology and knowledge. Entire fleets were now approaching it, but every attempt to study or contain the phenomenon produced inconsistent results. Analysts argued, shouted, and clashed over strategy, each more desperate than the last. One elder member of the council leaned back, voice trembling slightly. This is not something any species should possess, and yet humans are here, moving through it, surviving it. They are not just adaptable, they are evolving in ways we cannot understand. Humans, too, began to sense the broader implications. The anomaly was no natural hazard. It seemed almost deliberately tuned to test their limits. Navigation hazards, system disruptions, and inexplicable energy spikes all suggested intelligence behind the phenomenon. Yet, remarkably, the humans adapted. They improvised new approaches, coordinated responses, and discovered ways to mitigate the effects using principles that, to the Empire, would have seemed improbable or impossible. Every success built their confidence, yet each step forward increased the stakes. They were encountering a power that even the Empire feared, and harnessing it meant venturing into truly unknown territory. The human leaders debated strategy quietly, weighing the risks. "We can't retreat," one said firmly. "If we pull back, we give the Empire time to regroup, and we lose the advantage of momentum. But if we push forward, we risk everything." Another added, "We survive because we adapt. This anomaly is testing us, yes, but it is also teaching us. Every obstacle reveals something new. We learn faster than anyone expects. That's our strength." And with that, the decision was made. They would move forward into the heart of the unknown, relying on courage, ingenuity, and each other. As the fleet advanced, the anomaly intensified. Space itself seemed to twist and bend, energy readings fluctuated violently, and strange interference disrupted communications. Humans were being tested in every conceivable way. Systems failed, engines faltered, and unexpected hazards appeared without warning. Yet they continued, improvising solutions, relying on teamwork, and thinking creatively in ways the Empire could not anticipate. Each moment was a test, each maneuver a gamble, and every success pushed them closer to a confrontation that promised to redefine the balance of power. Then, without warning, the anomaly revealed a shocking truth. It was not merely a test, but a gateway. Sensors detected a structure, massive and partially hidden by distortions, unlike any known technology. It pulsed with energy, seeming almost alive, and its scale suggested a power beyond anything the Empire had cataloged. Humans stared at the readings, awe and fear mingling in equal measure. This was no natural phenomenon. It was engineered, deliberate, and designed to challenge them in ways that no one, not even the Empire, could have foreseen. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human fleet. Leaders realized that the anomaly was both obstacle and opportunity. It could provide unprecedented advantage, or it could destroy them entirely. The decision before them was unlike any they had faced before. Every instinct told them to proceed with caution, yet every fiber of their ingenuity and courage demanded action. They were standing at the threshold of something extraordinary, and the consequences of their next moves would echo across the galaxy. Across Imperial Command, the discovery caused chaos. Analysts scrambled to understand the anomaly, simulations crashed under the complexity, and commanders grew increasingly desperate. One high-ranking officer muttered, almost in disbelief, "If humans reach that structure, if they harness whatever power lies within, we will no longer control the galaxy. They will." Fear, more than strategy, now guided every decision. The Empire had been challenged in ways it could not predict, by a species it had underestimated, facing a force it could not control. The humans faced their own uncertainty. They could not fully understand what lay ahead, could not predict the full extent of the anomaly's effects, and could not know if survival was even possible. Yet the combination of courage, ingenuity, and unity that had carried them this far continued to guide them. They pressed forward, navigating hazards, adapting to the impossible, and preparing for whatever awaited them at the heart of the anomaly. Every step brought them closer to a confrontation that would define not only their survival, but the future of humanity in the galaxy. The stage was set for the next great challenge. The anomaly had revealed its nature, the Empire had revealed its fear, and humanity was poised on the edge of discovery and danger. The stakes had never been higher, the risks never more real, and the tension in the void of space more electric. One decision, one maneuver, one act of ingenuity would set the course for the ultimate confrontation. Yet the outcome remained unknowable. Humanity had survived impossible odds before. They had faced environmental collapse, pirate attacks, and imperial scrutiny. But now, standing before a force beyond comprehension, with the full weight of the Empire watching and fearing them, they were about to confront a challenge that would test every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage they possessed. The galaxy waited with bated breath, for the next moment would change everything. If you want, I can now write the final lead-up to the climax, where humans and the Empire are poised for direct confrontation, tension peaks, and the stakes escalate to near breaking point, without resolving the story yet, keeping full HFY suspense and human-centric focus. Do you want me to do that next? The anomaly pulsed around the human fleet like a living force, warping light, space, and even the perception of time. The structure at its center loomed larger now, a vast metallic silhouette that shimmered with energy beyond comprehension. It was not just an obstacle, it was a test, a threshold that no species had crossed before. Every system on the human ships flickered under its influence, sensors overwhelmed, engines straining, and communications crackling with interference. Yet humanity pressed forward. They had faced impossible odds before, but nothing like this. This was the culmination of everything they had learned, every skill honed through survival, and every ounce of courage they had ever possessed. Imperial fleets, massive and imposing, waited on the far side of the anomaly. They had finally calculated a path that would allow them to strike, confident that the humans could be contained once they emerged. But as the humans approached the edge, the Empire saw something it had never predicted. The anomaly itself responded to human presence. Its distortions shifted, almost as if it recognized the ingenuity and determination that had brought these beings this far. Fleets trembled in place, their weapons and scanners unable to function within the fluctuating fields. The Empire realized with growing dread that this was no mere trap. It was an active power that humans were uniquely capable of navigating. On the bridge of the flagship, leaders shouted orders, their voices steady but urgent. Systems failed, alarms blared, and yet the humans adapted instantly. Engineers rerouted energy to compensate for field distortions, navigators recalculated trajectories in real time, and the crew worked in perfect synchrony. The anomaly tested them in every conceivable way, but every challenge brought an opportunity. Humans learned faster than the distortions could adapt, moving with instinct, intellect, and courage that no machine or simulation could match. Then the anomaly shifted completely, forming a corridor of energy leading directly to the hidden structure. Humans hesitated for a fraction of a second, weighing the risk, knowing that a single misstep could destroy them all. But instinct and determination won. They surged forward, trusting in their ingenuity and in one another. The fleet passed through the corridor as if drawn by a magnetic current, the distortions collapsing behind them, leaving the structure fully visible and, astonishingly, open. Inside, the structure was unlike anything the humans had imagined. Vast halls stretched into darkness, walls lined with materials that seemed to resonate with energy itself. The technology was ancient and advanced at once, far beyond anything catalogued by the Empire. Humans stepped forward, cautious but fearless, their instincts guiding them through corridors that shifted subtly, almost in response to their decisions. Every puzzle, every obstacle, was a test of adaptability and cooperation, the very qualities that had defined humanity's rise. From the shadows, Imperial scouts watched, realizing for the first time that humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving in ways that even the Empire could not predict. Attempts to engage or disrupt the fleet within the anomaly failed. Weapons malfunctioned in the energy field. Ships could not maintain formation. Even their knowledge of space was rendered useless by the environment itself. The Empire's greatest fear was realized. Humans had encountered a power beyond control, and they were mastering it. At the heart of the structure, humans discovered the source of the anomaly, a massive core of energy, pulsing with intelligence, almost alive. It responded not to commands, not to force, but to understanding, creativity, and problem-solving. The humans instinctively interacted with it, adjusting sequences, rerouting energy, and aligning systems in ways that harmonized with the core. The energy responded, amplifying, extending its reach, stabilizing in a pattern that promised immense potential. For the first time, the humans realized they could not just survive, they could control a power that even the Empire feared. But the victory was not without cost. Imperial forces, realizing their conventional weapons were useless, began desperate maneuvers to isolate the humans. Warships attempted to cut off retreat routes, and massive energy cannons fired blindly into the anomaly, causing violent fluctuations that threatened the fleet. The humans were pushed to their absolute limits. Systems overloaded, shields failed, and moments of chaos tested every instinct, every ounce of skill, and every decision made under pressure. The tension reached a crescendo as humans and Empire faced each other across a battleground that defied comprehension. It was here, in the heart of chaos, that human ingenuity shone brightest. Engineers created a feedback loop using the anomaly's own energy, redirecting it to stabilize shields and propel ships with speed and precision no conventional engine could match. Fleet commanders coordinated maneuvers that exploited the energy field, using the anomaly itself as a weapon against Imperial forces. The humans did not destroy the Empire, they outmaneuvered it, turning overwhelming power into opportunity through strategy, adaptability, and instinct. Imperial command watched in disbelief as their carefully planned strike faltered. The humans, small and untested by their standards, had transformed the battlefield. Fleets that should have crushed them were disoriented, weapons useless, formations broken. Humanity had not only survived, they had turned the tables, demonstrating that ingenuity and courage could rival even the most formidable technology. The Empire faced the impossible, a species it had underestimated, wielding a power it could not contain. Yet just as the humans began to feel the rush of triumph, the structure pulsed violently. The energy core, now fully synchronized with their efforts, revealed an unexpected twist. It was not simply a tool or a weapon, it was a sentient intelligence, ancient and aware. It had been observing all life in the galaxy, waiting for a species capable of understanding its complexity, capable of using it without destroying it. Humanity had passed the test. The revelation stunned everyone. Humans had not only survived and adapted, but they had been chosen to inherit a force beyond the Empire's comprehension. The Empire's fleets recoiled in shock. Some ships attempted to retreat, but the anomaly's energy now extended beyond the structure, forming barriers that disrupted navigation and communications. The humans, guided by instinct and cooperation, moved freely, mastering what the Empire feared. The battlefield had shifted completely, leaving the Empire powerless to act without risking annihilation. Humanity's ingenuity had not only turned the tide, it had reshaped the rules of engagement entirely. Amid the chaos, humans paused to consider the implications. They had survived every test, overcome impossible odds, and gained control of a power beyond imagination. Yet even in triumph, there was awareness of responsibility. The core intelligence seemed to communicate through patterns of light and resonance, suggesting that it demanded careful stewardship, understanding, and unity. Humans realized that power alone was not enough. It required wisdom, collaboration, and foresight. They were ready, but the true challenge of what they had inherited was only beginning. And then, as the humans began to stabilize the structure and integrate the energy core into their fleet systems, an unexpected signal arrived from deep within Imperial Command. It was a message encrypted in layers even the anomaly systems had struggled to interpret. A warning, a revelation, or perhaps a challenge yet to be understood. The humans realized with a mix of awe and trepidation that the Empire had anticipated part of their journey, but not all. There was another layer to the conflict, one hidden, one that suggested the galaxy held even more surprises. The climax had been reached, and humanity had proven its resilience, ingenuity, and courage beyond any doubt. They had survived the impossible, turned chaos into advantage, and gained access to a force that could reshape the galaxy. Yet the final signal reminded them that the story was not over. The Empire, the anomaly, and the universe itself still held mysteries, challenges, and dangers that no one could fully predict. The tension, the stakes, and the suspense remained, leaving the galaxy on the edge of what was possible. Humans had risen, unmatched in ingenuity, courage, and unity, but the final twist hinted at a future even more complex than the trials they had overcome. They had won this battle, but the game was far from over. The Empire, though humbled, was still a formidable presence. The anomaly, though mastered for now, held secrets yet to be revealed. And humanity, standing at the threshold of unprecedented power, understood that their journey had only just begun. As the fleet regrouped, systems stabilized, and the energy core pulsed gently in resonance with human efforts, a final transmission flickered across the void, an enigmatic signal that no one had seen coming. It was neither threat nor greeting, but something else entirely. A message hinting at forces and choices beyond comprehension. Humanity had reached the climax of one story, but the universe was far from finished. The stage was set for the next chapter, and the galaxy waited, breathless, for what would come next. If you want, I can now create a full-polished YouTube-ready script from all these sections combined, optimized for SEO, suspenseful narration, and human-centric HFY storytelling, ready for recording. This would be a complete package for your video. Do you want me to do that? The fleet hovered in the calm after the storm of energy and chaos, the anomaly's pulse now steady, almost welcoming. The structure at its center had revealed itself not as a weapon, but as a repository of knowledge and power, waiting for beings capable of understanding it. Humans moved carefully, exploring corridors that shimmered with energy and resonance, noting that every adjustment they made seemed to harmonize with the environment rather than disrupt it. It was as if the universe itself recognized their ingenuity and determination, rewarding their courage with insight and potential. On the command deck of the flagship, leaders convened quietly. They were weary, their bodies and minds taxed by weeks of tension, danger, and impossible choices, yet their expressions were calm, focused. "We've survived what no one thought possible," one said, "and we've gained something that can change everything, not through force but through understanding and ingenuity. That is the real strength of humanity." Another nodded, adding, "We've learned that survival isn't just about reacting, it's about adapting, creating, and trusting each other. That's the lesson the galaxy needs to see." The anomaly itself had begun to stabilize, its energy now flowing in harmony with the human systems. Ships that had faltered before now moved with precision, guided by an almost symbiotic connection to the core intelligence. Engineers marveled at the technology, recognizing principles far beyond human design, yet still comprehensible enough to integrate with ingenuity and creative problem-solving. The humans realized that this power was not theirs to dominate. It was theirs to understand, respect, and wield wisely. In the far reaches of Imperial space, the High Council convened again, stunned by the outcome. Fleets that had expected easy victory now reported confusion and malfunction, unable to operate within the anomaly's influence. The Empire, which had once relied on sheer force and dominance, was forced to acknowledge a simple truth. Humanity had risen not through weapons or numbers, but through courage, unity, and intelligence. Analysts and commanders debated what this meant for the balance of power, but the consensus was undeniable. The humans had fundamentally altered the rules of engagement in the galaxy, and the Empire would never underestimate them again. Back on the frontier planets, the human colonies celebrated quietly, their victories resonating across worlds, not in fanfare or conquest, but in survival and ingenuity. Communities rebuilt faster, inspired by the knowledge that they had faced the impossible and endured. Every individual, from engineers to pilots to scouts, understood that their actions mattered, that cooperation and creativity had tangible consequences, and that humanity's true power lay in the ability to adapt and thrive together. The anomaly, now understood as a living intelligence of sorts, began to offer more than stability. It provided glimpses into knowledge lost to the galaxy for eons. Humans discovered principles of energy, navigation, and communication that allowed their colonies to flourish in ways previously thought impossible. They saw how to repair environments, improve resource management, and extend the reach of their fleets without resorting to aggression. The revelation was profound. Power could exist without domination, and ingenuity could reshape civilizations without destruction. As humans explored the structure further, they found that it also held warnings, subtle tests embedded in the corridors and chambers. These reminders emphasized responsibility, foresight, and collaboration. The core intelligence seemed to guide them not toward conquest, but toward understanding, teaching that power wielded recklessly could destroy as surely as a direct attack. Humanity's leaders realized that the anomaly had tested not just their skill, but their character, their ability to rise to a challenge without losing sight of ethics, unity, and empathy. Imperial forces, though humbled, began to withdraw cautiously. Their warships, once symbols of invincibility, now represented limits. Commanders had witnessed human innovation firsthand and understood that the galaxy had changed. Attempts to dominate or suppress would no longer succeed as they once had. The Empire recognized that survival and influence could no longer be dictated by force alone. They would have to reconsider their approach to a species that had proven intelligence, resilience, and adaptability could rival sheer power. Back among the humans, discussions turned toward the future. They had survived, they had learned, and they had gained access to forces beyond comprehension. But with that knowledge came responsibility. "We cannot just take this and use it for ourselves," one leader said quietly. "We must understand it and ensure it benefits everyone. Humanity has a choice, to rise with wisdom or to fall to hubris." Another added, "This is what sets us apart. We survive not by crushing others, but by learning, adapting, and helping each other. That's the lesson we carry forward. The colonies began implementing the insights gained from the anomaly. Systems improved, resource networks stabilized, and communication across distant worlds became faster and more efficient. Humans were not seeking empire or domination. They were building resilience, innovation, and cooperation. The galaxy, once dominated by fear and hierarchy, began to feel the subtle shift that humanity's rise represented. A future where intelligence, ingenuity, and unity could outweigh sheer power, and where courage and adaptability became the true measures of strength. Even the young scouts and engineers, once focused on survival alone, began to see their role in the larger story. Every decision, every adjustment, every act of bravery contributed to a network of progress. Humans had become a species that could adapt not only to the galaxy, but to the unexpected, capable of shaping outcomes through creativity and courage rather than domination. It was a realization that gave hope not just to those who had survived, but to the generations who would follow. The Empire, watching from afar, began to reconsider its own methods. Commanders and strategists realized that their dominance was no longer absolute, that intelligence, innovation, and adaptability could counter sheer firepower. While they retained control over vast regions, they now understood that the galaxy was evolving in ways they could not dictate. Humanity had shown that a species with courage, ingenuity, and unity could rise above even the most formidable odds, and the Empire could not ignore the lesson. As the humans prepared to leave the anomaly behind, they took with them not just knowledge and resources, but a profound understanding of themselves. They had faced the impossible, adapted to the unknown, and risen to a challenge that no one, not even the most powerful empire, had predicted. They had survived, learned, and grown. And in doing so, they had proven that the true power of humanity lay not in weapons or fleets, but in courage, ingenuity, and the ability to work together in the face of uncertainty. And yet, even as the fleet departed, a subtle signal pulsed faintly from the anomaly. Not threatening, not aggressive, just a reminder that the universe held mysteries yet to be revealed. Humans understood that this was not the end of their story, but the beginning of a larger journey. They had risen to a challenge, reshaped expectations, and learned the value of adaptability and courage. But the galaxy remained vast, unpredictable, and full of opportunities and dangers alike. In quiet moments across the frontier worlds, humans reflected on what had been achieved. They had survived impossible odds, faced the Empire, and mastered a power that had seemed beyond comprehension. They had learned that ingenuity, courage, and unity were their greatest weapons, and that survival was only meaningful when paired with responsibility and foresight. The galaxy had been forever changed, not through domination, but through the enduring spirit of humanity. The final message was clear. Humans were capable of extraordinary things, but the story of their rise was ongoing. They had proven that even against overwhelming odds, intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability could turn the tide. The Empire had learned caution, the colonies had learned resilience, and humanity had discovered a strength that could guide them through the challenges yet to come. And as the stars stretched endlessly ahead, the humans moved forward with quiet determination. The anomaly faded behind them, its lessons absorbed, its power respected. They carried hope, ingenuity, and courage with them, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that no force in the galaxy could define their potential. The journey was far from over, but the first chapter of humanity's rise had been written, and it would be remembered for generations as a testament to what a species could achieve when ingenuity and courage met opportunity in the vastness of the stars. Humanity had survived, humanity had adapted, humanity had risen. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy itself seemed to acknowledge a new force, one that could shape its future not through fear, but through courage, unity, and unyielding ingenuity. The story had reached its conclusion for now, but its echoes would resonate forever across the stars. If you want, I can now compile the full story from the introduction through climax and resolution into a single polished YouTube-ready script, optimized for SEO, suspenseful narration, and maximum audience engagement. It will be formatted for narration, with smooth flow and HFY storytelling. Do you want me to do that?